This interview is part of a series on how to improve the quality of government. The international community has had disappointing experience in trying to improve state capacity in various developing and transitional countries over the past 20 years. It's usually the case that foreigners do not have either the knowledge or the leverage to bring about significant change. When there is a government, however, that wants to change, foreign assistance can be very important. I spoke with Batu Kutelia, who worked in the Georgian Ministry of Defense during the 2000s, about the kind of help that was given Georgia by the United States and by the NATO alliance.
My name is Batu Kutelia. I'm the Vice President of the Atlantic Council of Georgia. Previously, I served in Georgian government in a number of positions. I worked as Georgian ambassador to the United States, as Deputy National Security Advisor, First Deputy Defense Minister, Head of Foreign Intelligence Service, and Deputy Foreign Minister. In my previous capacity from the NGO sector, my primary goal and focus is to foster and support Georgia's Euro-Atlantic integration.
Mm-hmm. So I think that Georgia's foreign partners have been really critical in building institutions, including the military. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, what role was played by, NATO and other Western countries in that process.
If we analyze from a distance the reform and institutionalization of the reforms in Georgia, we will discover the success cases and some of the shortfalls. Then most of the success cases, in my experience, was linked to the very important and crucial assistance Georgia got from international partners, and particularly, I mean, Ministry of Defense. The institution was that was a very corrupted Soviet-style design that we inherited, and nowadays we have a modern NATO standard institution. Of course, there is a huge space for improvement, but institutionally it corresponds to all the standards of the NATO. And this was possible not only because we were the reform-minded and we had an immediate need to improve our defense capacity, but also the ability to absorb assistance that the NATO provided us. And NATO provided us not only the vision and the expertise how the system should like, but also the mechanisms on a step-by-step how to implement those visions. Mm-hmm. So how to transform resource planning, how to link the nice visions or real security requirements to the country's economy. Mm-hmm. Particularly, one example I can name is a PPBS system, planning, programming, and budgeting system, which was a total innovation, and the Ministry of Defense was the first agency among other governmental agencies who changed its system to the PPBS system. It took a lot of efforts because you cannot do this only in one agency, but then the finance ministry followed and some other relevant agencies who are responsible on the budget planning. And it was very cost-effective, efficient, and mission-efficient planning that enabled the Georgian Defense Institution to be interoperable with the NATO partners. Another key and the crucial element also institution development-wise that NATO supported, and individual NATO countries as well, because under NATO umbrella, individual member countries contributed a lot, was the human resource management system. The most successful one was in the civilian part of the Ministry of Defense. It was relatively small and easier to do. A little bit harder was in the military personnel and human resource management process, but still institution-wise, this system is well streamlined. Of course, it will depend on any consecutive minister how fast or slow this process will develop, but the good thing is that this process is irreversible. Mm-hmm. And irreversible is because of the mechanisms not only that Georgia should implement, mm-hmm. but also the monitoring mechanism that NATO has mm-hmm. to guide us through this difficult process.
And I take it part of the human resource problem was to depoliticize the military and to make sure that the politicians didn't try to use it as a vehicle for their own purposes.
Yes, the major, let's say, fulcrum of the defense reform that changed us from the Soviet system to the democratic defense management system was two key pillars. First, the Minister of Defense itself should be a political appointee to exercise political control over the armed forces. And the second was to delineate between the professional staff and the political appointees. So professional staff would continue routinely the process of transformation, defense planning, and execution. And the political appointees, who mostly are only minister and deputy ministers, they might change, and we had a quite frequent change, for good or for bad reasons, but quite frequent change of ministers of defense. But the professional staff still remains today, and the reform process and transformation process is going on.
But I take it that's not a universal thing among all parts of the Georgian government, that you have this strict separation of the political layer at the very top and then a very professional staff underneath.
Yes, today that's overall the problem of the Georgian government, and many shortfalls in terms of pace of the reforms or transformation is linked to that frequent change of entire personnel composition of different agencies and ministries based on the political change or the political taste of the ruling elites. And next challenge for Georgian government, this one or any future government, would be to implement that type of civil service reform. As I know, there is a huge effort made by our international partners, United States particularly, with investing resources in that project that potentially will enable Georgia to conduct this reform and to provide a very solid guarantees for the professional staff in public service that would make their jobs stable and also enable to improve the quality of public service. While the political appointees can be changing frequently as the political leadership of the country will decide. But this process is under, let's say, designing phase right now. But again, as we will learn as well, the implementation phase will be crucial.
Right, right.